is CGTN, China Global Television Network.
Hello and welcome to The World Today, live from CGTN in London. I'm Juliet Mann. Our top stories. Acquitted for a second time, but now former US President Trump could face criminal charges. The UK vaccinates more than 15 million people as pressure grows on the Prime Minister to loosen lockdowns. And we'll tell you how China's tourism industry hopes to handle the Year of the Ox. A second impeachment, a second acquittal. So, can America now move on from the bitter political discord of Donald Trump's presidency? As expected, Democrats failed to get enough Republicans to back their move to convict Trump of inciting a deadly attack on the Capitol. But after voting against it, top Senate Republican Mitch McConnell went on to savage his former president, calling him practically and morally responsible for the insurrection and implying he could still face criminal action. Donald Trump issued a typically defiant statement after the verdict, hinting he could return to the political spotlight. Well, let's talk to Jagriti Dave, who's in Washington, D.C. with the latest for us. Jagriti, thanks for joining us. Tell us a little bit more about the reaction there's been.
Well, I think there's been a mixed reaction and a lot of dissatisfaction on both sides at the results. You mentioned there Mitch McConnell, the top Republican, saying that, giving an excoriating rebuke to President Trump and calling him morally responsible for January the 6th. He voted to acquit, however, saying that it was unconstitutional to convict a former president. I mean, from the man himself, President Trump issuing a statement, thanking the Republicans who stood by him and calling this yet another phase of the greatest witch hunt in the history of our country. You've got his family members who are also tweeting, criticism of the trial itself. You've got reaction from Joe Biden, the US president, who said that while the final vote did not lead to a conviction, the substance of the charge is not in dispute. He alluded to the fact that this was a bipartisan decision, 7 Republicans crossing party lines to vote with their Democratic colleagues, making it the most bipartisan impeachment trial in history. And you've also had people like Chuck Schumer, the Senate Majority Leader, saying that the vote to acquit Donald Trump will live as a vote of infamy in the history of the United States. Nancy Pelosi criticizing Mitch McConnell for his decision to acquit, and despite his criticisms of Donald Trump, she said it was pathetic that Senator Mitch McConnell kept the Senate shut so that it could not receive the article of impeachment, and she said that he used that as an excuse for not voting to convict Donald Trump.
Well, as you were talking, we could see pictures of some of the people whose reaction you were talking about there. What does this verdict mean, though, for Donald Trump?
Well, look, in his statement, for the former president, gave no indication of taking any responsibility for what happened on January the 6th, gave no condemnation of the violence that was inflicted on that day. And this is despite, as we just talked about, this was one of the most bipartisan decisions in the Senate in terms of the impeachment, in terms of an impeachment trial, the most bipartisan vote. To his supporters, President Trump said that our historic, patriotic and beautiful movement to make America great again has only just begun. He's hinted before at possible a future run in 2024. This was obviously one of the reasons why Democrats wanted to hold a trial and hoped to convict in the first place, in which case they could then hold a future vote to bar Donald Trump from holding federal office again. But there's a sense that, President Trump is not yet completely gone from the party. He still holds sway within the party itself, and obviously with a large part of the Republican base. And, the future is uncertain. You've got Lindsey Graham, who even before the verdict came in, said that he was talking to President Trump about working towards retaking the House and the Senate in 2022. So, the president's future still uncertain, given that some of that sway that he holds within the party.
I mean, how uncertain is it? Is this the end of it? Because we had some of the reaction there, of course, saying that this could turn into a criminal quest.
Yes, exactly. And there are still, when we talk about an uncertain future for the Republican Party, there is also an uncertain future for its former leader. Donald Trump is facing investigations. Prosecutors in Georgia have opened an investigation looking into the president's attempts to overturn the election results there. He's already got New York prosecutors looking into his business interests. And now that he no longer is protected by the presidency, there is a possibility that more cases will be opened, possibly criminal, possibly civil cases against him. But in terms of the party and the president's sway, again, that is still uncertain, having seen Mitch McConnell very vocally say that, effectively indicate that he wants the party to move on from President Donald Trump. You've also got other top Republicans like the former ambassador to the United Nations, Nikki Haley, also indicating that she too wants to move on from President Trump. She's one of those who's considering a run in 2024. So whilst some people say that the president's position might be waning, others say, well, look at the base. There's still some indication he might hold some support still in the future and influence in the party.
Jagruti Delway in Washington, D.C., thank you very much for that update. Well, let's bring in Dr. Evan Lawrence, who's a lecturer in US politics and security. Doctor, what do you think this verdict means for America? We've talked about what it means for Trump. What does it mean for America?
And I think when we look at the overall kind of trial, both in the House and in the Senate, I think what we're seeing is that divide between the Republicans and the Democrats in the wider society as well. And the need for the Republicans really to kind of refocus and bring their party together before it fractures into Donald Trump Republicans and the more moderate Republicans.
So it appears to clear the path for Donald Trump to run again. I know that's not clear cut. I mean, do you think he's likely to have another bash at the presidency? With
his personality, I think it's anyone's guess. I don't see it. Certainly, it's not impossible. I think he may run in the primaries just to see where he's at. He's certainly got the base for it. So, I mean, I think it's a wait and see. Certainly, the Republican leadership will be looking for him not to run again. But I think that's only one of those things that time will tell.
I want to pick up on something you mentioned before about the Republican Party and the future of that. How do they reconcile that huge Trump support base with voters who clearly want to get back to more, dare I say it, moderate politics?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's going to be a really difficult thing for them, and it may be the thing that really sways the next presidential election as well. I mean, I think they have to get on with dealing with the coronavirus. They have to deal with the economy. Lots of kind of, local issues that need to be dealt with that Trump really didn't kind of address during his presidency. So, dealing with all of those kind of things that are rolled up in the idea of the president and the foreign policy, but also the domestic policy that the president puts out, I think is a really important kind of part of bringing the country back together. And I think you're going to see Biden certainly trying to do that. And I think the Republicans within the House and the Senate are going to be looking to work with President Biden to do that and to bring kind of the party back to a bit more moderate terms and looking at kind of fixing the economy, dealing more effectively with coronavirus. And the only way to do that is to work with the Democrats and become a more moderate party where you see that the Trump Republicans and Trump's supporters haven't really been able to manage those things well. So I think you're going to see a lot of cooperation between both sides in the next few years.
So we've talked about the Republican Party and how that might evolve. We've talked about what it potentially means for Trump. And you've hinted a little bit there about Biden and what this means for his term. How will he move on? You mentioned the big ones there, coronavirus, the economy. Where's he going to start on that path to cooperation that you talk about?
Well, I mean, I think you're starting to see him already kind of roll back some of the things that Trump has done foreign policy wise. So rejoining international organizations, things like that. I think it's going to be a really difficult 4 years for him. The Republicans aren't going to make it easy. They're certainly going to, push for their views on things, which is the way that our democracy in the U.S. works. But I think you're going to start seeing more control of COVID issues and things like that, but also things like the stimulus packages and different welfare reforms and things like that to help kind of small businesses and independents, as well as kind of the average citizen, if you will, where Trump was very much focused on kind of big business and the very rich. I think Biden is much more focused on small business and individual citizens and making sure that, they're able to have electricity and put food on the table and the kind of basics that a lot of people are really struggling with in the U.S. at the moment due to kind of COVID and the breakdown really of the U.S. economy over COVID.
So COVID control cooperation, but really sticking up for you and me, for ordinary people, not just big business. Well, it's always a pleasure talking to you. Thank you very much, Dr. Evan Lawrence. Tighter border controls take effect in Germany in an attempt to limit the spread of more contagious coronavirus variants. That comes as Spain's Catalonia votes in a regional election overshadowed by the pandemic. Rahul Pathak reports.
On Sunday, Germany tightened its border controls with the Czech Republic and neighbouring Austria's Tyrol region, which have seen a sharp increase in the COVID variant first detected from South Africa. More than 200 travellers were stopped from crossing the border into Bavaria, with only a small number of exceptions, such as essential workers and those with trade links between the two countries.
It's good to see that the measures we have taken are having an effect in Bavaria. A few weeks ago, we were facing a dark, difficult time, so we had to take consistent measures.
In Spain's Catalonia region, voting has begun to choose its regional government. Special measures have been put in place to ensure the safety of voters. Those groups who are especially vulnerable were asked to vote early when the polling stations first opened. Spain has seen its infection rates fall, with the 14-day average dropping by nearly half since its record peak this time last month.
I think we all need to recognise that this is not over. We are still in the midst of controlling the pandemic, so we need to be very careful with what we do.
Now, Spain has just surpassed 1 million completed vaccinations, but there are plans to try and ramp up the process. Some regions have announced they plan to use sports stadiums as a way of increasing the amount of vaccines administered. Finally, in Belgium, one of the oldest street carnivals in Europe has been cancelled. Normally, the small southern town of Binche is bursting with partygoers and festivities. For this year at least, the gigantic heads will have to sit on top of specially built poles as the locals hope for better times ahead. Rahul Pathak, CGTN, Madrid.
Italy's new Prime Minister has vowed to unite and restart the country after his cabinet of politicians and technocrats was officially sworn in. Mario Draghi is now preparing for two crucial parliamentary votes of confidence this week. Hermione Kitson reports on a historic day in Italian politics.
This is Mario Draghi's dream team, the cabinet of the former European Central Bank chief tasked with steering the country through its pandemic recovery.
Giuro di essere fedele alla Repubblica.
I swear to be loyal to the Republic, to faithfully respect its constitution, its laws, and to exercise my role in the exclusive interest of the nation.
The 73-year-old was officially sworn in by President Sergio Mattarella during a scaled-down ceremony in line with COVID regulations. Of his 23 ministers, 15 are politicians across the spectrum and 8 are technocrats. Some high-profile ministers retained their portfolios, such as Health Minister Roberto Speranza. After weeks of political turmoil, there was a symbolic transfer of power, the cabinet meeting bell handed from one Prime Minister to another. And as Giuseppe Conte prepared to leave Palazzo Chigi for the last time, a fond farewell. In a parting statement on Facebook, he thanked the Italian people and said that even on the most difficult days, he was proud and honoured to have served in the role. What led to Conte's downfall will be the cornerstone of Draghi's prime ministership, the management of the $250 billion EU recovery fund as the country deals with a worsening economic crisis. In his first cabinet meeting, Prime Minister Draghi outlined his other priorities as the country's vaccination plan, the environment and education. He said his goal is to unite, restart and secure the country. But firstly, his government needs to pass crucial votes of confidence in the Senate on Wednesday and the lower house on Thursday. Hermione Kitson, CGTN, Pescara.
Still ahead here on The World Today. 15 million people in the UK have now received their first jab as the country tries to vaccinate its way out of lockdown.
Don't forget you can sign up to our daily newsletter. We bring you all the top business headlines straight to your inbox. So sign up for free at this address. CGTN. See the difference.
Patient after patient after patient. They take a long time to get better. They're the sickest patients we've ever seen.
It's a race against time because we can all see the threat that our NHS faces, the pressure it's under.
We're dealing with something we knew very little about.
Europe's first two epicentres in February have received their first dose of the Pfizer-BioNTech vaccine.
Another day, another grim milestone for the UK in its fight against COVID-19. 100,000 people have now lost their lives after contracting the virus.
Welcome back. In the UK, at least 15 million people have now received their first coronavirus jab. That's according to the country's vaccine minister, who says the rollout will now be expanded to over 65s and people who are clinically vulnerable. Let's speak to CGTN's Nweed Barkle, who's in London. Hi there, Nweed. Now, some positive vaccine news, but lifting lockdown, well, that's another question entirely, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. Boris Johnson, the Prime Minister, calling this a significant milestone. 15 million people vaccinated with the first jab. That puts the country up there per capita with the likes of Israel and the United Arab Emirates leading the world. But really, this is a bit of a double-edged sword for the government because those opposed to these crippling lockdowns, crippling but effective lockdowns, say they need to be eased. The government's next target is to get 32 million people vaccinated by the end of April, and that's when opponents say these lockdown restrictions should be eased. And really, the argument for that is 99% of people who are likely to die from the virus would have been vaccinated by then. And so the argument is, why can't the rest of us get on with our lives?
After a grim winter, the promise of a spring bloom that could mean freedom for millions in the UK. Plans are being drawn up to ease England's third national lockdown within weeks. It'll start with schools reopening before shops and then hospitality venues will be allowed to resume business.
On the 8th of March, we are hoping to get schools back. The precise details we need to just make sure we set out once we've evaluated all of that evidence. So the Prime Minister will give more of a steer on the 22nd, but the aim is to get schools reopening in a responsible way on the 8th.
Prime Minister Boris Johnson says enough progress has been made in the fight against COVID to warrant a relaxation of rules. Key to that success has been its world-leading vaccination programme. 15 million people have now received the first dose here, but as more people get a jab, the calls for an end to lockdown are getting louder. More than 60 of his party colleagues have signed a letter to Boris Johnson warning that legal coronavirus restrictions must finish by the end of April. That could put the Prime Minister in a tricky position politically, given the unpredictable nature of this virus.
Coronavirus is certainly going to be with us for some time to come. We already have nearly 20,000 people still in our hospitals suffering the consequences of this virus.
Once again, Britain finds itself at a key juncture in its fight against COVID. Infections are down, hospital numbers and deaths are falling, and vaccines are protecting more people. But opening up comes with its own risks, and officials will be hoping they can minimise those while moving a few steps closer to normal.
So a very difficult balancing act for Boris Johnson and his government in the next few weeks, I think, Juliet, trying to appease those people who want to see the economy reopen and want to see people allowed out of their homes with the need to save lives, particularly when you have new variants of the virus continuing to spread worldwide.
Louis Jabakil, thank you for the update. Well, let's take a quick look now at some other news from around the world. A snap lockdown has begun in New Zealand's biggest city, Auckland, after 3 people tested positive for coronavirus. Those are the country's first cases in 2 months. Prime Minister Jacinda Ardern says 2 million residents must stay home from midnight on Sunday, while schools and non-essential businesses will close. New Zealand's been widely praised for its response to the pandemic, with just 25 deaths and fewer than 2,000 infections. 4 people have died from Ebola in Guinea, the nation's first resurgence of the disease in years. Another 4 people have tested positive for the virus in the southeast region of Nezrakore, where deaths are possibly the first in the region since the 2013 to 2016 epidemic, which started in New Guinea and left more than 11,000 people dead across West Africa. Hundreds of thousands of protesters have taken to the streets in Myanmar for a 9th day in a row after the army seized control of the country. Comes as the new military rulers struggle to contain a strike by government workers. Some trains have stopped running after staff refused to go to work. Well, matches in France's top football league are taking place under a special China Day initiative this weekend. It's a way for clubs to celebrate the Chinese New Year holidays. But the festivities come at a time of serious financial problems for the top French league. Ross Cullen reports from Paris.
As the Chinese New Year holiday gets underway, the French Football League has chosen to mark the New Year of the Ox with a special China Day to focus on the links between the two countries.
I think that sporting and cultural exchanges between China and France are an important part of the bilateral relationship. If we improve these sporting links, we can make a big contribution to the development of our mutual ties.
This is the Parc des Princes in southwest Paris. It's home to defending league champions Paris Saint-Germain, or PSG, and the club explains how their Asia strategy has been evolving.
What's important for us is we've been going now for 3 summers to China. We have done some very big tours in China, very successful, and every time it's more and more fans, a lot of youth, and we have a lot of our players who are very, very famous in China, like Mbappé, like Neymar or Draxler.
China and France are trying to expand their football links, with Beijing making a move into French football's television rights. MediaPro is a Spanish broadcaster majority-owned by a Chinese investment fund, and it secured a huge contract to show matches for the next 4 seasons. But the deal collapsed after the broadcaster stopped its payments to the league. The contract was expected to bring in about $950 million a season. French broadcaster Canal Plus has stepped in to show the remainder of the matches this season, but there's still a serious hole in the league's finances. Games are going ahead, but there's one major missing component for clubs like PSG: no fans in the stadiums. Supporters are still not allowed in stadiums due to COVID-19 restrictions, and that drop in matchday revenue has pummeled French clubs. The LFP, which runs the top 2 divisions in France, said its losses already amount to more than $1 billion. The China Day initiative brings a festive feeling to the league this weekend, but the holiday atmosphere cannot hide the next goal of French football bosses: an urgent meeting with government agencies to seek an emergency financial support plan. Ross Cullen, CGTN, Paris.
Holiday travel is seeing a dramatic decline in China as many people heed the government's call to stay put. In Zhejiang province, tourism officials are handing out vouchers to nearby residents to try to get people spending. Our reporter Li Jianhua has more.
Wujian is one of the most famous water towns in East China. With well-preserved historical architecture, Wujian, crisscrossed with waterways, has a history of about 1,300 years, and it has been a major destination for many Chinese to celebrate the Lunar New Year. But this year, reduced holiday travel has taken a toll on tourism, prompted by recent COVID outbreaks in China and a government's call for people to avoid making non-essential trips. Now the once bustling water town is rather quiet. Some people have made the trip from nearby cities.
I'm from Hangzhou. The number of tourists has dropped this year due to the pandemic. It's not convenient to visit other tourist spots. It's troublesome to leave the province. It's easier to come here. It's closer.
There are more than 50 homestays in Wujian. Fan Hongzhou has been running her business for 4 years.
A majority of the tourists are from nearby cities. Interprovincial travel has declined during the pandemic. Most are from Hangzhou, Ningbo, and Shanghai. Regardless, the pressure is not that serious because the rent is waived during the pandemic, which saves me a great deal.
Yao Jie has managing Wujian's tourism sector for nearly 20 years. Her company has been handing out vouchers to residents in the province in the hope of luring more customers.
We've rolled out a package encouraging local residents to travel within the province. This way, more people from Zhejiang province can come to Wuzhen. We have also handed out vouchers worth tens of millions of yuan to people all across China. They can get the vouchers online and offline. As long as they come in February, they can enjoy discounts in most of our restaurants and shops.
Tourism officials hope the handouts will work, but there is likely a long way to go for the numbers to bounce back to pre-pandemic levels. In 2019, more than 9 million trips were made to Wujian. Despite a quieter Spring Festival, the holiday spirit remains high, and many people carry a lantern like this one and walk across an arched bridge like this one behind me, which symbolizes warding off the evil spirits and hopes for a prosperous year of the ox. Li Jianhua, CGTN, Wujian.
Final look now at our top story. Acquitted for a second time, but now former US President Trump could face criminal charges. After voting against impeachment, top Senate Republican Mitch McConnell implied that Trump could still face criminal action. And before we go, a new picture of the red planet, and the first taken by a probe sent by the United Arab Emirates. The UAE's Hope spacecraft took the image as it entered Mars's orbit, capturing the largest volcano in the solar system, Olympus Mons. Well, that's it for the world today. Thank you for watching. We're available on smart TV apps like Roku, Apple TV, Amazon Fire and Android TV. You can also find us on YouTube and Daily Motion, and of course at cgtn.com and on the CGTN app. From all of the team here in London, goodbye.